We're here to discuss Wind and Truth. We finally did it. We finally finished the book. I finished it several days before he did, and so I was chomping at the bit. Finish it, so that we could discuss it, and now we're going to share them with all of you.
I didn't know we were going to highlight that you finished first, but no one's surprised. So,
we also have Cheryl the Chol.
Cheryl the Chol.
She needed a name.
Okay. Before we jump in, we'll just remind you, this is very spoilery. We're not holding back on anything. I think most of the people watching these videos wouldn't have clicked on this unless they were interested in that. Yes. Okay with that. But hey, now we've said it. So
I mean, at this point, this is our third video. And anyways, full spoilers. We talk about them all.
So we're going to start with our favorite moment.
Yep.
And this is going to be of the last third of the book, roughly?
Yes, day 8 through day 10. That's the last chunk that we read.
So we're going to pick one moment.
One moment. One
and obviously,
scene.
The culminating scene of this whole thing, or the culminating scenes are all happening. So we don't necessarily choose one of those, but a highlight moment for us.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What was your favorite?
My favorite moment is chapter 118 with Sigzil and Moash. And it's like the final battle. And Moash is going in to kill his spren. And Sigzil renounces his oaths because he determines that it would be better for his spren to be a Deadeye than it would for his spren to be dead. Total, sacrificial moment. It was amazing. He saved his spren. And then it kept going forward. And when Sigzil met 12124 and who was going to become Ox, I really think.
We think.
And that was my favorite moment, favorite storyline. Sigzil against Moash and his spren.
That's a good one. So my favorite moment, and there was lots of scenes, lots of build up, obviously throughout the book. I really liked the storyline in the end of the listeners. Venli's group. There was a little bit in me earlier in the book. I didn't talk about it, but it was like, what are we doing? Splitting off this splinter group.
The Shattered Plains, right?
Yeah, they're out on the edge of the Shattered Plains. There had to be a reason for it. Venli goes out there. All of a sudden, they can talk to chasm fiends. I'm like, how did this not come up at any point? You kind of see some hints about it now. I think at the end, you kind of see some hints. Like there was rumors that the chasm fiends were their gods and whatever. So, there was more connection than we saw.
Yeah.
But nothing that we saw in the listener culture, which only lasted the first 2 books or whatever till it was destroyed. 2 or 3. Anyway, 3 books. Nothing really pointed that direction. So I think it was good kind of misdirection by Sanderson. In the end, I did like what he did there. I think one of the reasons I liked it is because I kind of could see where it was going. And it was one of those things where you feel kind of smart and there's a little bit of mystery. It wasn't rocket science if you were paying attention to that. So, I'm not saying anything special there other than it was fun. And the whole idea of basically retreating and giving them control of that section rather than the fuse that were there, I thought was well played. And it was one of only 2 areas outside of Urithiru that were not handed off to Odium.
Yep.
Although the subsequent move by Odium to sort of put them back under subjection.
Yes. Yeah,
where they have to pray to him every day.
They pray to him every day and
to get their Stormlight.
Yes.
So that's a little sneaky, but what else would you expect from Odium?
Retribution.
Oh, true. I guess it's retribution.
It's now
at that
retribution
point.
now.
We're going to take a moment for complaint, and then I think we have to come back to an accounting of our predictions.
Oh.
And we can talk about that because that was one thing you mentioned last time that I didn't see happening. But let's not go there. Okay. Yes. So we each actually stuck to our favorite moments. That's pretty good. Let's take a moment for a complaint.
Deep breaths. Mine is an overall complaint of the whole book.
Are you going to take mine? We may have the same one.
Let's see. The same one. We'll see.
The dice are cast.
My overall complaint of the book is that this does not feel like Brandon. And that's just a really hard pill to swallow. And maybe this is the direction that Brandon has chosen to go. There has been other videos and critiques that I've watched where they have, mentioned some flip-flopping with him based on personal views and other things, and that Brandon has gone woke. and they blamed the modern publishing industry or influences of other people. Regardless of what that is, this book is kind of the culmination of what was pre-2020 COVID and post-2020 COVID, and Brendan has fully embraced woke ideologies. Somebody mentioned Marxism and the idea that, truth is relative and we can kind of all do what we want to do, and there isn't really anybody who's bad or anybody who's good, and really embracing all of the therapy and anyways, this book doesn't feel like he wrote it. And if this is the direction that he's going, do I keep reading him? That's my,
Oof.
I know, the weight in my heart.
We went straight to the weightier matters.
Yes.
I thought that was going to be the overall thought at the end, is more that level, but you're going there, so that's fine.
Yeah, I just went there.
Okay.
Because it plays into the whole book. It's the whole book from page 1. And yes, days 8, 9, and 10 were the Sanderlanche, and everything moved faster, and I would go back and I would read just days 8, 9, and 10. And I ended up reading it so that I could skip the things that I didn't agree with or I didn't feel were appropriate. And the fact that I had to do that then makes it so that I can't recommend this book. I could always recommend him and knew that it would be a slam dunk. And I can't do that anymore.
I'm going to move to mine.
Okay, yeah.
Mine's very predictable. If you watch the last two, part 1 and 2 of our reviews for this, I was begging for him to save Kaladin. I was holding out hope somehow that Kaladin wouldn't become, and it's similar things, but I'm just going straight to this point, become this weak, I'm going to sit around and do therapy instead of fighting and being who I am.
Right.
Now you can say character growth, this or that or whatever. Yeah, I just call baloney. We did not pick up this book. The fan base is not what it is because of who Kaladin ended up to be.
Yeah.
It's who he was and how he got, how he was progressing through those early books, that made him one of the most popular characters in the Cosmere. And to make it to the end, the only fight he gets into, he gets beat up.
Yep.
And in the end, his role, and I do like, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to sort of dodge or step into this as far as predictions. Mentioned earlier the possibility of him becoming a herald.
You did.
I felt pretty good about that.
Yeah, totally nailed that one.
I like that sort of angle for him as a way to move him on, but keep him around. He's not dead.
Right. No, I liked that he became a herald. It was how he became a herald.
Yeah, and what he's planning.
His swearing of the fifth ideal.
And
so anti-climactic.
Well, but that's a part of the same thing,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And what we're seeing him planning to do as a herald, he's not really, from the reading, he's not really a herald.
No.
He's the therapist for the heralds.
Yes.
And I don't know how else to say it, lame-o.
Yes.
In every sense of the word.
Yep.
That's just, so I definitely feel, so this is my complaint section, so I can go full bore. Totally let down. Yep. This was a huge miss. Screwed up one of the best characters, and there was no redeeming it.
No.
And even though overall the story
so
moved forward and the story worked in different ways and there's pros and cons, whatever, that part and what happened to Kaladin, a travesty.
Yep.
So
I do like that he became a herald. Like I feel like that is a good progression for him. It was how it went about.
He'd be an awesome herald.
Yes.
Wielding the spear and doing this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not what he's doing.
No, that's not what it's set up for. So that's my complaint. There could be others, but we said only one.
We said only one.
We said only one. I think in the overall thoughts, and that's where I thought the high level reaction, you can go back to that. The overall thoughts.
Yes.
We make a little outline. Obviously, we're not good at sticking
to the outline.
Let's rehash some of our predictions. How'd we do? Predictions again.
You nailed Gavinor.
Yeah.
You totally nailed that.
But it's funny. I threw that out there in the first one, and then the second one, I'm like, well, I guess that didn't happen. And then in the third one,
it did totally happen.
It happened. They did some. Odium played with time, made Gavinor grow up, and brought him out as the champion. I will admit, early on, pre-book release, like Rhythm of War book release time, that idea was planted. So I can't take 100% credit for it. I read a bunch of
read
stuff,
it somewhere else.
and somebody threw that out in some discussion forum somewhere, and that one stuck with me. And as we were reading, I'm like, oh, here's the vehicle where that could happen. So I put it together. But anyways, that was one that went well. The Herald thing, we got that.
About that.
Yep.
I didn't have any predictions. I'm not good at that.
You said that Caladan was going to die.
Oh,
And that's
I did
what
think
the
Caladan
Herald
would
conversation
die.
came up.
Yes.
And again, I don't think you were wrong. In a sense, right? He moved on from this series.
Yes,
He was pulled out of
yes.
the plot line. So
Yeah, he's pulled out of the world. He's
Yeah.
He's on Braze with all of the Heralds, and now he's
now it is
running
interesting
group therapy.
with this slowness, this time bubble around Roshar.
Yep.
Could the Heralds return, and are they likely to return in the back half of the series in the next 5 books? So are we actually going to see Caladan again in the next 5?
They totally are.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon already said who the characters are of each of the last 5 books, and one of them is Tom. So
he's coming back.
the Heralds are coming back. Caladan will be back.
Yeah, and I think we'll see him
Yeah,
there.
there's Tom, Yasna, Lift, Renarin, Venli.
I just hope he does all his therapy on his own time and doesn't mess up the book with it, and he comes back with a bunch of well-centered, put together heralds, and they all group together to beat up the bad guys and refound civilization and help as needed in that. And please don't give me another bunch of sit-down therapy.
The moment where Kaladin and Szeth are fighting Nail, and Kaladin's like, I'm his therapist. And I'm like, what the freak? No, you're not. You are there as his friend. Like, it is way better for him to show up as a friend than as a therapist. Like, if we are taking our modern day take on therapy, your therapist is not your friend. Your therapist really doesn't care what happens to you, especially when the money ends. They're not going to show up when you're crying your eyeballs out at midnight, and they're not going to call you the next day to make sure that you're okay, and they're not going to be there when you're totally in the dumps. They're only there when you show up with money. Kaladin is his friend, and I am tempted to take a black Sharpie to all of my books, and I'm writing out therapist, and I'm putting friend.
I'm not letting her do that. First of all, those are half my books. First of all, and second of all, I think what you're pointing out is that the therapist relationship, if that were the case, it would actually be inappropriate and less effective.
Totally inappropriate and less effective.
Be personally involved.
Yes.
When you're there to clinically help somebody, and that just seems wrong.
Had not good interactions. Yeah. So
let's finish. let's wrap this up. Let's talk about overall thoughts.
Overall
now.
Thoughts. Okay.
You kind of said yours in the complete
I did.
section. I was separating mine out.
Yes, I shared mine in the complete section. You share yours.
Here's my thing. Growth is not the same as change.
True.
I think sometimes we get those mixed up. We feel ourselves changing. We see others changing, and we assume that in the context, they must be growing. They must be learning. And that
is positive.
Yeah, and that is positive. And we see all the time people sometimes don't learn from their mistakes. Sometimes in life, there's change that happens, and it's not good.
It's not good.
Why do I bring this up? It's related to what you said. I see Brandon and his writing have changed. And whether it's something he's stated about his ideology or whatever, there's plenty of evidence in these books that his writing has changed.
Yeah.
And he has given some reasons, really come across as excuses. And I hate to be critical of the man. That's not my intent. But I'm coming from the place of an embittered fan.
And from the love group. Like, we are the love group. Like, we love everything that he's done. And he has created a world and an experience that we're able to enjoy together. And we're able to bring our family in.
Yeah, and, and from a business sense, from an artistic sense, if you change and you leave your audience, well, that's art. From a business sense, if you stop serving your customers, you lose your customers. What that means when you put the business and art together is sometimes you stop getting to do your art.
Yeah.
Now, he has been so successful and he has so many people invested. Can I say that I'm not going to read any of his future books? I can't say that today. Could he get to a place where I put him down and never pick up another Sanderson book? He could go there. But I don't think he's appreciating how much he has alienated his reader base. And yes, there's always going to be a very vocal group on either end of the spectrum.
Yes. Yeah.
People who absolutely can't take any change, and people who want more change. Want him to become them.
Yeah.
We're not talking on either side. I think if you go to the center of his audience, you'll find a lot of disillusionment. And the part that bugs me the most, this has all been built up. The part that bugs me the most is I think he knows what he did. Because he came out in an article previous to this, and he said, wow, this might make or break my career. And it's like, why would you say that? If I were his friend, if I lived across the street and we shot hoops together, or I don't think he shoots hoops.
I don't think he shoots
Whatever, if we played Magic the Gathering or played video games together, I would turn to him and as a friend say, yeah, I see that you've changed and it's not for the best.
No.
It's not good for your business. It's probably not good for your family. And he could say, you don't know anything about me. And I would say, absolutely, this is your choice. I'm just a friend off to the side. And I want to be the one waving the flag. I'm the watcher at the rim, if you will. And we're talking about all the woke stuff. We don't need the therapy. The writing has changed for the worse. We don't need to be pulled out of the world to be, get some treatise and whether it's a good topic or not, right? Things about slavery and racism and all this other stuff. Great, those are topics to address.
We don't need the gender issues.
It made it worse writing.
Yes.
The LGBT stuff, whatever your feelings are on that. Yeah, he's written many books without those issues and without those plot lines, and he has done fantastically well.
Yeah.
Sometimes in business, you find your niche. They call it the hedgehog principle, and you keep doing the thing. And you serve the most customers, you're the most successful, and everyone appreciates and loves it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I understand that change can be experienced by some people as growth and not actually be positive growth like they would assume. So that's my overall thoughts. Up until this book, I have, without reservation, repeatedly said that Brandon Sanderson is my favorite author.
Yep.
Where we're at after this book is he is a good author.
Yeah.
I don't know who my favorite author is anymore, but he's just like...
It's so sad, though, that one book can totally negate the 50 other books that we've read.
But it's because it's not a book. It's an ideology.
Yes.
The things, and that was my next point. You went right there. Is I've read other books that have been okay. Joe Abercrombie, right? Not my favorite books. They're decently entertaining. He's a good author, and just he was not a Brandon Sanderson. He did not touch that. Brandon has sunk to his level. Wow, that sounded really bad. Sorry, Joe. Don't know Joe. But, he has changed who he was, and now he's just another author because he had all the same garbage that I didn't have to deal with.
Yep.
With those other books.
It's so true.
And I'm monologuing, kind of going a little deep on this. Obviously, we feel very strongly about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at overall.
There have been moments of mourning as we have come to the end of this book. So book rankings in the Stormlight Archive. Number 1 for me is Oathbringer, and then The Way of Kings, Rhythm of War, Words of Radiance, and then Wind and Truth is my least favorite.
My first one is actually Words of Radiance.
So Words of Radiance, ratings-wise, like on Goodreads and stuff, rates the highest out of all of them.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, yep. I agree with those people. Well, so here's the thing, though. Words of Radiance benefits by the setup in Way of Kings. So that, for me, would be 1 and 2. Words of Radiance benefits and from Way of Kings, and Way of Kings is this great introduction to something we all know and love.
Yeah.
And then the back 3, Oathbringer has to come first, because in Rhythm of War, we really start the slide. The hours of Kaladin moaning and having his internal strife, which I thought he solved in Rhythm of War,
Yes.
was really just the precursor to having a whole book of it.
Yes.
And those are my least favorite chapters then of the entire series. And now I have a whole book of it. And then Oathbringer, Rhythm of War, and Wind and Truth. Definitely, if we're rating them, if we're ranking them, that's how it would go. Why Words of Radiance first? That one wins on one scene. There's some other stuff in there. Yes, when he says, well, Honor's dead, but I'll see what I can do, and vaults into the arena. That is He
says that in Wind and Truth again.
Not the same.
Not the same
Not
thing.
the same thing.
Not the same thing.
And that is the issue.
Yep.
If
Cheryl
it was
agrees.
that, yeah, if it were that moment again, you've got a winner.
But it's not.
It's a distant, beat down ghost of that moment that doesn't come across the same. Throughout the book and throughout these reviews, we said, I hope he pulls it out, and pulls, lifts the nose of the plane and lands the sucker somehow. Even though he did a decent job of wrapping up storylines, across the board as a whole thing, it was a fail. That plane's burning on the runway. At the end, my favorite parts of the ending were the Cosmere stuff.
Yes.
Hoid visiting other
was
places
awesome.
and just the tie-ins. The overall Cosmere story is the best thing about this series.
Yep.
Which is sad because before, every series and every book, the books were good, the series were good, and then the Cosmere was icing on the cake.
Right.
And you could just eat it all day.
Yeah.
And this was not the
that.
case. We're left with just the icing. So.
Oh, should we have a moment of silence?
We are going to do some reviews of other books.
Yep.
And so one of the reasons there isn't a Cosmere reference in the title of this channel or anything is because we love to read. We're currently reading a book called Dark Matter, and we'll be talking about that shortly.
Yep.
It's a sci-fi multiverse read that at its core, I think is actually a love story. So, yeah, chew on that.
Join us for that.
Yep, so we'll see you on that one. And in the meantime,
we'd love to hear your thoughts.
we'll see what kind of comments there are.
Yeah.
Thanks for hearing us out, and hope to see you again soon.
Bye.